Have you ever stared into a mirror and suddenly felt that the one staring back at you is more than just flesh and bone, more than just a reflection in the glass? That behind that familiar face lies something deeper, stranger, and sacred? There is something within you, something you cannot name, cannot draw, yet it's always been there. Like an undercurrent flowing beneath the ocean's surface, silent yet powerful, waiting for the day it rises. It's not the intellect you gained from books, nor fleeting emotions, but a primordial, ancient energy, as if it existed long before you were born. You feel it in the quiet nights, when the world stops whispering, when you lie alone in the dark, and questions begin to stir. Who am I? Why am I here? There's something more, isn't there? And in that silence, your soul speaks not with words, but with a feeling that you haven't fully lived, that some part of you is still asleep. We grow up in a world that teaches us how to please others, how to behave properly, how to stay silent when our heart wants to scream, and how to pretend we're okay even when our soul is breaking. We learn to live by patterns until we forget the voice within. But then, at some point, maybe right now, something awakens. A call, soft as wind, but loud as thunder. It's time. Wake up. And that's why you're here, listening to these words. Not by chance, but because deep inside, you know you've been searching for something. A truth, a soul memory, a forgotten flame waiting to be rekindled. Today, we won't talk about theories or philosophies. We're going on a journey to discover you. Not the version of you that the world sees, but the true essence within the place where your soul's purest energy resides. An energy that can shape reality, heal wounds, and lead you to where you've always belonged. Are you ready? Every human being is born with an invisible gift, a silent spark, a raw and sacred force that defies logic. It's not something you can see or touch, but you can feel it deep within the chambers of your heart. A nameless power that can heal wounds that once seemed impossible to mend. A limitless energy capable of creating miracles. And a deep, hidden potential that can transform your entire life in ways your rational mind has never dared to imagine. But ironically, most of us grow up in a world that's always in a rush. A world that teaches you how to run fast to keep up with others, but rarely teaches you how to pause and listen to yourself. We learn how to chase goals, conquer challenges, and climb the invisible ladders of success, but we forget how to sit still with our sadness, embrace our pain, or simply ask ourselves, where am I going, and why? We get swept up in the endless chase for jobs, money, relationships, reputation, and somewhere along the way, we forget. We forget that the deepest, most honest answers have always been right here, within us, quietly waiting for us to return. Have you ever felt different? Like you didn't quite fit in? Have you ever looked at the world around you and felt like a stranger? Have you ever wondered, is there something more to life than packed schedules, small talk, and fleeting connections? If you've ever felt that way, then maybe, just maybe, it wasn't an illusion. Maybe it was a sign, a gentle invitation from your soul, calling you home, back to yourself, back to the truth you've always known, but somehow forgot. In this video, it's more than images, sounds, or words. It's a reminder, a calling, a journey, the journey back to the center of your soul, where your most original, powerful, and awakened self resides. If you're hearing these words right now, it's not by chance. Maybe, just maybe, the time has come. The time for you to take your first steps back home. The first energy, the original light, the soul's first truth. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine that you are a star, not in the romantic, metaphorical way people often say, but in a raw, sacred truth at the core of your soul. You are light. Before you had a name, before the labels good child, top student, useful person, before expectations, lessons, commands, and the pressure to become someone, you were already you. You were free life itself, radiant and boundless, the living embodiment of original light, untouched by fear, unshaped by expectation, undefined by society. That light, that energy has never left you. It was there in your first breath when you entered this world crying. It was in your uncontainable joy as you danced without caring who watched. In your laughter that bubbled up for no reason. In your wide-eyed wonder the first time you saw a rainbow. It is the soul's primordial force, inspiration, intuition, creation, and pure, unconditional love. It doesn't just sustain you, it is you. But over time, that light began to fade, not because it died, but because it was covered by the dust of the world. Repeated beliefs: be better, be like the others, control your emotions, please everyone. The outside voices grew louder than the one within, and you began living a script that wasn't yours, playing a role that didn't reflect your soul. You started to doubt yourself. You tried to change to fit in, not realizing you were drifting away from your essence. And so, the light dimmed. Not because you lost it, but because you forgot how to reach it. But remember, that light is still there, always, beneath the pain, the judgments, the masks. You don't have to do something grand to find it again. Just one moment of stillness. Just place your hand on your heart and feel the rhythm pulsing from deep within. Just breathe without rushing, without forcing, as if every breath is a miracle. In that moment, you touch the light. A small flicker, yes, but full of power. A quiet spark, yet carrying the essence of life. This is the first step of awakening, not to become a better version of yourself, but to return. Return to the original soul. Return to the light that has always been within you, waiting to be seen, loved, and set free. You don't need to shine like anyone else. You just need to reignite yourself. The second energy, intuition, the primal voice of the soul. Think back. How many times, in those rare moments of stillness amidst the chaos, have you suddenly heard a soft whisper from deep within? Not a clear voice, not a deliberate thought, but a quiet certainty, a gentle pull, as if some deep part of you was saying, "Don't go that way," or "This is your moment." You couldn't explain why. There was no evidence, no logic, just a knowing, clear, strong, and inexplicable. That voice is not your imagination, it's not impulsive emotion, and it's certainly not superstition, despite what the world might say. That voice is your intuition, the invisible, miraculous compass encoded within your soul since birth. It doesn't shout, it doesn't argue with your logic, it doesn't need to prove itself, because it doesn't speak from fear, and it isn't shaped by your past or by other people's desires. It rises from the quietest, deepest place where you are directly connected to your highest truth. Intuition is the second energy, a sacred gift every soul possesses. But tragically, the modern world has taught us to forget this miraculous ability. From a young age, we're taught to think it through, to have proof, to listen to adults, even when those adults are lost in their own lives. We learn to distrust ourselves, to believe outside voices over our inner one, and bit by bit, we lose touch with the soul's original sensitivity. But intuition has never abandoned you. It's only been waiting. Every time you choose stillness over mental noise, every time you choose to feel instead of analyze, you move closer to the voice of your soul. It may come softly, like a whisper of wind brushing past your heart, but if you pause long enough, you'll notice it's always right. Not by society's standards, but by your own, the standards of your soul. Intuition is not a replacement for logic. It's a deeper layer, wider, truer, and more profound. When you learn to listen to it, you begin living not just by what you think is right, but by what is true for you. Life stops being just a series of mental decisions. It becomes a spiritually guided journey, a life lived in truth, freer, deeper, and more meaningful. And here's the miracle. When you return to your intuition, you return to yourself. The questions you've long asked, who am I? Where should I go? What is right? They begin to unfold. Not through the noise of the outer world, but through a quiet clarity from within. Intuition is the first and final voice of your soul. The third energy, creation, the sacred breath of the soul. You were not born just to survive. You didn't come into this world just to wake up, go to work, pay bills, and repeat the cycle until you're drained. No. Your soul was never meant for a life that feels empty and numb. You came here to create. Creation is not confined to canvases, music sheets, or polished designs. Creation is the living energy flowing through every breath, every touch, every small act you offer with intention and love. It's how you love without expecting anything in return. How you hold space for someone breaking down without judgment. It's how you turn the simplest things into something meaningful, like smiling at a stranger, or writing one honest line to warm your own heart. Creation is the power to turn pain into wisdom, silence into melody, an ordinary day into one where you feel truly alive, fully, soulfully alive. When the current of creative energy flows freely, you no longer feel lost in this world. Your heart opens, your mind lights up, and you feel a deep connection with the universe, as if every cell in you is dancing to the rhythm of life. You're no longer just an isolated being trying to survive, but a vessel through which something greater flows, a stream of light, a breeze of inspiration, a miracle in motion. But if today you feel tired, empty, or disconnected from yourself, if your ideas feel dry and your actions feel forced, don't rush to conclude that you've lost your creativity, because you cannot lose what is a fundamental part of your soul. You've only blocked the flow, perhaps from fear, perhaps from past wounds, or simply because you haven't given yourself permission to create, for no reason at all. Maybe someone laughed at your ideas. Maybe someone made you believe you weren't good enough. Maybe society taught you that only what is useful, profitable, or validated is worth creating. And bit by bit, you shrank. You closed the door to your creativity, and with it, a living part of your soul. But here is the gentle truth you need to remember: that well of creation is still there. It never disappeared. It was never broken. It cannot be erased. It's only asleep, waiting for you to call it back. All it takes is permission. To write a few meaningless lines, to paint a picture that isn't beautiful, to dance when no one's watching, to breathe and live as yourself without reason, without permission. In that moment, the door will open, and that sacred creative energy will rush back in, not just to help you make something new, but to help you recreate yourself. The fourth energy, emotion, the soul's most subtle voice. From a young age, we were taught that emotions are something to be controlled, that crying is weakness, that anger is wrong, and that sensitivity is a burden. We grew up in a society that glorifies logic and achievement, where deep emotions are seen as signs of instability or too much. And little by little, we learned to hide our tears, swallow our anger, and smile even when we were breaking inside. But the truth is, emotion is not a weakness. It is a form of intelligence, a subtle signal your soul sends you, not through words, not through thoughts, but through the vibrations within your heart. Emotion is the first, purest language your soul uses to whisper to you about what's truly happening inside. Every emotion, whether it's radiant joy, heavy sorrow, blazing anger, or quiet fear, carries a message. They don't come to break you. They don't make you less than. On the contrary, they arrive like companions, like soul messengers, bringing the quiet reminder: something within you needs attention, needs understanding, needs love, or release. But in a world that's trained to wear masks, we're conditioned to move on rather than listen. We learn to suppress not because we are strong, but because we forget we have the right to feel. And so every time you dismiss your sadness, hide your anger, or ignore your fear, you unknowingly sever a thread that connects you to your true self. Emotional awakening doesn't mean being ruled by feelings. It is the sacred art of sitting with yourself like a compassionate friend. When you can sit beside sorrow without pushing it away, when you dare to face your fear without fleeing, in that moment you open the door to the deepest, truest part of who you are. Emotion is a map inward, a key that guides you through the maze of thought, back to the center of presence. And every time you allow yourself to fully feel, you're not becoming weak, you're becoming whole. You are not too sensitive. You are living with the depth of an awakened soul. Emotional energy is a stream flowing back to your source. It doesn't need you to understand everything. It only needs you to feel deeply. Because sometimes what heals you is not the answer, not the solution, but the courage to feel all the way through. And at the very end of that feeling, you will find yourself. The fifth energy, shadow, the silent doorway back to light. It may sound paradoxical, but the truth is this: sometimes the place you fear the most is the very place that holds your greatest inner power. The place you've avoided, the place you've buried, the place you've never dared to face, is not a pit to be hidden, but a sacred door, quietly waiting for you to step through. We often call these places the shadow and assign to them everything negative. They are the unhealed wounds, the repressed memories, the silent shame, the unspoken rage, the buried insecurities from childhood. We're taught to hide them, to cover them with layers of positivity, and to keep moving forward as if they never existed. But the shadow is not your enemy. It doesn't appear to destroy you. The shadow is the forgotten part of your soul longing to be loved. It is the space within you that has never been touched by presence, by compassion, by understanding. And so it stays not silent, not still, but quietly shaping your thoughts, your actions, and the beliefs you carry. Just as a seed must rest in darkness in moist, quiet soil to sprout into new life, your soul too must sometimes sink into its own inner night to be born again. The shadow is not the end, it is the night before dawn. It is the space where you listen, the place where you return. Awakening doesn't begin when you become more perfect, more positive, or more enlightened. It doesn't come from forcing yourself to be cheerful, strong, or right all the time. True awakening begins when you stop, sit down, and look directly at what you've long avoided. When you are brave enough to face the pain without rushing to fix it. When you can whisper to the hurting part of you, "I'm here, I'm listening, I'm not running anymore." And in that very moment, when you stop fighting your darkness and start being present with it, with eyes full of compassion, you will witness something miraculous. The light you've been searching for all along has always lived within the part you feared the most. Healing isn't about banishing the darkness. It's about bringing the light of awareness and love into it. And when you do that, you don't just overcome your shadow. You liberate a part of your soul that has long been sealed away, so it can live again, rejoin your being, and shine as it was always meant to. The final energy, integration, the journey home to your original soul after everything, after you've walked through the primordial light and dared to face the forgotten shadow, after you've listened to the whisper of your intuition, allowed your emotions to flow like an unblocked river, released your stifled creativity, and found the courage to sit in the silent space with no words, something begins to rise. It's not excitement, it's not an explosion of joy, it's something strange and yet deeply familiar. As if you've come home, not to a place or a destination, but to yourself, to the deepest part of you that was lost somewhere beneath the world's endless noise. This is the final energy, the energy of integration. It is not loud, not dazzling. It doesn't need to prove anything. It comes gently like mist, like a deep exhale. A moment where you're no longer trying to become, no longer feeling incomplete, no longer needing to change yourself to be loved. All seeking stops, and you simply are. In this state, you are no longer a scattered piece trying to fit into someone else's picture. You are the whole canvas woven from both light and shadow, from both wounds and healing, from both every time you fell and every time you rose. And you realize you were never truly broken. You simply forgot. This is the awakening of the original soul, not a better version, not you 2.0, but your purest self, free, loving, powerful, a self that no condition can dim, no pain can destroy, and no circumstance can extinguish. You don't have to achieve anything to be worthy of this state. You don't have to prove you're enough. You only have to allow yourself to come home. Allow yourself to remember. Allow yourself to be with no armor, no defenses, no pretending. Because in the end, the greatest journey is not about discovering something new, but peeling back each layer of forgetting to return to the truth of your soul. And that is integration, not the end, but a beginning again, with a whole heart, a light rising from within, and a presence that no longer needs conditions to exist. The universe never shouts at you to get your attention. It doesn't force, it doesn't push, it whispers gently, patiently, like an old friend waiting for you to remember something long forgotten. It sends signals through moments when your heart suddenly tightens and you don't know why, through the eyes of a passing stranger that somehow feel ancient, familiar, through a quiet night when you gaze up at the stars and suddenly realize you are both incredibly small and profoundly sacred. That is the call to return, not a return to the past, but a return to yourself, to the part of you that was never truly lost, only momentarily forgotten. Awakening isn't something mystical or grand. It doesn't demand that you retreat to a mountain or meditate for 40 days. It begins with small choices made quietly, consistently, every single day. Listening instead of reacting, choosing courage over avoidance, loving yourself as if you're holding a child just awakened from a long dream, lost, fragile, but full of potential to heal and come alive again. If you've read or listened this far, I believe this. It's not a coincidence. It's not meaningless. Some part of you has already begun to awaken, and that is all you need for today. Just one part of you believing, it's time. The rest the universe will guide. If this video awakened something within you, a vague memory, a feeling you can't quite name, a quiet whisper from deep inside, leave a like, hit subscribe, and share it with a soul who might also be finding their way home. Because who knows, just one message, just one small video, might be enough to touch the heart of someone who's been lost and change their entire life.